Page 5 of The Adventures of Master F.J. by George Gascoigne. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. When he had long, and all in vain, looked for the coming of his mistress into her appointed walk, he wandered into the park near adjoining to the castle wall, where his chance was to meet Mistress Fraunces, accompanied with one other gentlewoman, by whom he passed with a reverence of courtesy. And so walking on came into the side of a thicket, where he sat down under a tree to allay his sadness with solitariness. Mistress Fraunces, partly of courtesy and affection, and partly to content her mind by continuance of such talk as they had commenced overnight, entreated her companion to go with her unto this tree of reformation, whereas they found the knight with his armes folded in a heavy kind of contemplation. Unto whom Mistress Fraunces stepped a pace, right softly, and at unawares gave this salutation. I little thought, Sir Knight, quoth she, by your evensong yesternight, to have found you presently at such a morrow mass, but I perceive you serve your saint with double devotion, and I pray God grant you treble meed for your true intent. He being taken thus upon a sudden, could none otherwise answer but thus. I told you, mistress, quod he, that I could laugh without lust, and jest without joy. And therewithal starting up, with a more bold countenance came towards the dames, proffering unto them his service to wait upon them homewards. I have heard say oft times, quod Mistress Fraunces, that it is hard to serve two masters at one time, but we will be right glad of your company. I thank you, quod he. And so walking on with them, fell into sundry discourses, still refusing to touch any part of their former communication, until Mistress Fraunces said unto him, By my troth, quod she, I would be your debtor these 2 days, to answer me truly but unto one question that I will propound. Fair gentlewoman, quod he, you shall not need to become my debtor, but if it please you to quit question by question, I will be more ready to gratify you in this request, than either reason requireth, or than you would be willing to work my contentation. Master Ferdinando Jeronimi, quod she, and that sadly, peradventure you know but a little how willing I would be to procure your contentation, but you know that hitherto familiarity hath taken no deep root betwixt us twain. And though I find in you no manner of cause whereby I might doubt to commit this or greater matter unto you, yet have I stayed hitherto so to do, in doubt lest you might thereby justly condemne me both of arrogancy and lack of discretion, wherewith I must yet foolishly affirme, that I have with great paine bridled my tongue from disclosing the same unto you. Such is then the good will that I bear towards you, the which if you would rather judge to be impudency, than a friendly meaning, I may then curse the hour that I first concluded thus to deal with you. Herewithal being now red for chaste bashfulness, she abased her eyes, and stayed her talke. To whom Ferdinando thus answered, Mistress Fraunces, if I should with so exceeding villainy requite such and so exceeding great courtesy, I might not only seeme to degenerate from all gentry, but also to differ in behaviour from all the rest of my life spent. Wherefore to be plain with you in few words, I think myself so much bound unto you for divers respects, as if ability do not faile me, you shall find me mindful in requital of the same, and for disclosing your mind to me, you may, if so it please you, adventure it without adventure, for by this Sun, quod he, I will not deceive such trust as you shall lay upon me, and furthermore, so far forth as I may, I will be yours in any respect. Wherefore I beseech you accept me for your faithful friend, and so shall you surely find me. Not so, quod she, but you shall be my trust if you vouchsafe the name, and I will be to you as you shall please to terme it. My hope, quod he, if you be so pleased. And thus agreed they two walked apart from the other gentlewoman, and fell into sad talk. wherein Mistress Fraunces did very courteously declare unto him, that indeed one cause of her sorrow sustained in his behalf, was that he had said so openly overnight that he could not love, for she perceived very well the affection between him and Madame Elinor, and she was also advertised that Dame Elinor stood in the portal of her chamber, hearkening to the talk that they had at supper that night, wherefore she seemed to be sorry that such a word rashly escaped might become great hindrance unto his desire. But a greater cause of her griefe was, as she declared, that his hap was to bestow his liking so unworthily, for she seemed to accuse Dame Elinor for the most unconstant woman living. In full proof whereof she bewrayed unto him how she, the same Dame Elinor, had long time been yielded to the minion secretary, whom I have before described, in whom though there be, quod she, no one point of worthiness, yet shameth she not to use him as her dearest friend, or rather her holiest idol, and that this notwithstanding Dame Elinor had been also sundry times won to choice of change, as she named unto Ferdinando 2 gentlemen, whereof the one was named Hercule Donati, and the other Hannibal de Cosmus, by whom she was during sundry times of their several abode in those countries entreated to like courtesie. For these causes the Dame Fraunces seemed to mislike his choice, and to lament that she doubted in processe of time to see him abused. The experiment she meant was this, for that she thought Ferdinando, I use Bartello's words, a man in every respect very worthy to have the severall use of a more commodious common. She hoped now to see if his enclosure thereof might be defensible against her said secretary, and such like. These things and divers other of great importance, this courteous Lady Fraunces did friendly disclose unto him, and furthermore, did both instruct and advise him to proceed in his enterprise. Now to make my talke good, and lest the reader might be drawn in a jealous suppose of this Lady Fraunces, I must let you understand that she was a virgin of rare chastity, singular capacity, notable modesty, and excellent beauty. And though Ferdinando Jeronimi had cast his affection on the other, being a married woman, yet was there in their beauties no great difference, but in all other good gifts a wonderfull diversity, as might between constancy and flitting fantasie, between womanly countenance and girlish garishness, between hot dissimulation and temperate fidelity. Now if any man will curiously ask the question why he should choose the one and leave the other, over and besides the common proverb, so many men, so many minds, thus may be answered, we see by common experience, that the highest flying falcon doth more commonly prey upon the corn-fed crow, and the simple shiftless dove, than on the mounting kite. And why? Because the one is overcome with less difficulty than that other. Thus much in defence of this Lady Fraunces, and to excuse the choice of Ferdinando, who thought himself now no less beholding to good fortune, to have found such a trusty friend, than bounden to Dame Venus, to have won such a mistress. And to return unto my pretence, understand you, that he, being now with these two faire ladies, come very neere the Castle, grew in some jealous doubt as on his own behalf, whether he were best to break company or not, when his assured hope, perceiving the same, gan thus recomfort him. Good Sir, quod she, if you trusted your trusty friends, you should not need thus cowardly to stand in dread of your friendly enemies. Well said in faith, quod Ferdinando, and I must confesse, you were in my bosome before I wist, but yet I have heard said often, that in trust is treason. Well spoken for your selfe, quod his hope. Ferdinando now remembring that he had but erewhile taken upon him the name of her trust, came home per misericordiam, when his Hope entring the Castle gate, caught hold of his lap, and half by force led him by the gallery unto his Mistresse chamber. Whereas after a little dissembling disdaine, he was at last by the good help of his Hope right thankfully received. And for his Mistresse was now ready to dine, he was therefore for that time arrested there, and a supersadius sent into the great chamber unto the Lord of the house, who expected his coming out of the parke. The dinner ended, and he thoroughly contented both with welfare and welcome, they fell into sundry devices of pastime. At last Ferdinando, taking into his hand a lute that lay on his Mistresse bed, did unto the note of the Venetian Galliard apply the Italian ditty, written by the worthy Bradamant unto the noble Rugier, as Ariosto hath it. Rugier quath semper qui, etc. But his Mistresse could not be quiet until she heard him repeat the Tinternel, which he used over night, the which he refused not. At end whereof his Mistresse, thinking how she had shewed herself too earnest to use any further dissimulation, especially perceiving the toward inclination of her servants Hope, fell to flat and plain dealing, and walked to the window, calling her servant apart unto her, of whom she demanded secretly and in sad earnest, who devised this Tinternel. My father's sister's brother's son, quod he. His Mistresse laughing right heartily, demanded yet again, by whom the same was figured. By a niece to an aunt of yours, Mistresse, quod he. Well then, servant, quoth she, I swear unto you by my father's soule, that my mother's youngest daughter doth love your father's eldest son above any creature living. Ferdinando, hereby recomforted, gan thus reply: Mistresse, though my father's eldest son be far unworthy of so noble a match, yet since it pleaseth her so well to accept him, I would thus much say behind his back, that your mother's daughter hath done him some wrong. And wherein, servant, quod she. By my troth, Mistresse, quod he, it is not yet 20 houres since without touch of breast, she gave him such a nip by the heart, as did altogether bereave him his night's rest with the bruise thereof. Well, servant, quod she, content your selfe, for your sake I will speak to her to provide him a plaister, the which I my selfe will apply to his hurt. And to the end it may worke the better with him, I will purvey a lodging for him, where hereafter he may sleep at more quiet. This said, the rosie hue disdained her sickly cheekes, and she returned to the company, leaving Ferdinando ravished between hope and dread, as one that could neither conjecture the meaning of her mystical words, nor assuredly trust unto the knot of her sliding affections. When the Lady Fraunces, coming to him, demanded, What dreame you, sir? Yea, marry do I, faire lady, quod he. And what was your dreame, sir? quod she. I dreamt, quod he, that walking in a pleasant garden, garnished with sundry delights, my hap was to espie hanging in the aire a hope wherein I might well behold the aspects and face of the heavens, and calling to remembrance the day and houre of my nativity, I did thereby, according to my small skill in astronomie, try the conclusion of mine adventures. And what found you therein, quod Dame Fraunces? You awaked me out of my dreame, quod he, or else peradventure you should not have known. I believe you well, quod the Lady Fraunces, and laughing at his quick answer, brought him by the hand unto the rest of his company, where he tarried not long before his gracious Mistresse bade him to farewell, and to keep his houre there again when he should by her be summoned. Hereby he passed the rest of that day in hope, awaiting the happy time when his Mistresse should send for him. Supper time came and passed over, and not long after came the handmaid of the Lady Elinor into the great chamber, desiring him to repaire unto their Mistresse, the which he willingly accomplished. and being now entred into her chamber, he might perceive his Mistresse in her nights attire, preparing her selfe towards bed, to whom Ferdinando sayd, Why how now Mistresse, I had thought this night to have seen you daunce, at least or at last, amongst us. By my troth, good servant, quoth she, I adventured so soone unto the great chamber yesternight, that I find my selfe somewhat sickly disposed, and therefore do straine courtesie, as you see, to go the sooner to my bed this night. But before I sleep, quoth she, I am to charge you with a matter of weight. And taking him apart from the rest, declared that, as that present night, she would talk with him more at large in the gallery near adjoyning to her chamber. Hereupon Ferdinando discreetly dissimulating his joy, took his leave and returned into the great chamber, where he had not long continued, before the Lord of the Castle commanded a torch to light him unto his lodging, whereas he prepared himselfe and went to bed, commanding his servant also to go to his rest. And when he thought as well his servant as the rest of the household to be safe, he arose again, and taking his night gowne, did under the same convey his naked sword, and so walked to the gallery, where he found his good Mistresse walking in her night gowne, and attending his coming. End of page 5.